1 mile south of a small town called Nespelem, Washington, there's a cemetery. It's the final resting place of Chief Joseph, one of the most revered leaders in Native American history. 2 weeks ago, flames came within reach of that cemetery. It survived. Barely. The fire around it did not spare much else. That fire is called the Kaiser Canyon Fire, and it's just one piece of a national emergency so large that the United States has now called in help from Australia and New Zealand to fight it. Right now, 84 large wildfires are burning across the western United States, 45 of them completely uncontained in just 2 states, and the agency in charge of coordinating the national response has raised the country to the highest possible readiness level on its scale. That level has nothing left in reserve above it. This has been the reality since the middle of July, and as of this week, federal officials are giving no indication that it is about to ease up. More than 4.5 million acres have burned nationwide so far this year, already ahead of the 10-year average. To put that in perspective, that's an area larger than the entire state of Connecticut on fire in a single season. And over 2.6 million of those acres are actively burning at this very moment. Just yesterday alone, more than 300 new fires were reported across the country, 9 of which grew large enough to be classified as new major incidents in their own right. Let's go region by region, because this crisis is touching nearly every state in the West, and the numbers involved are staggering. According to the National Interagency Fire Center, the federal agency that tracks and coordinates the country's wildfire response, 26,000 firefighters and support personnel are currently committed to fires across the nation, backed by hundreds of fire crews, more than 500 engines and close to 200 helicopters. On top of that, the U.S. has brought in an international team of roughly 75 incident management specialists and firefighters from Australia and New Zealand, specifically to help manage the crisis in the Pacific Northwest. That alone tells you how serious this has become. When a country calls in foreign firefighting support, it means up. Domestic resources are stretched about as far as they can go. Military support has been activated too, with specialized Air Force Reserve and Air National Guard units flying modified C-130 cargo planes, converted into air tankers, out of bases in Oregon and California. Let's start in the Pacific Northwest, because Oregon and Washington remain the epicenter of this entire disaster, sitting at that same maximum national preparedness level all on their own, with 45 uncontained large fires and 18 separate complex incident management teams actively assigned across the 2 states. Oregon currently has more than 30 large fires burning. The biggest story in the state right now is the Rowena Creek complex, burning in Wheeler County, roughly 20 miles southwest of the small town of Fossil. It ignited from a lightning strike in mid-July and has now burned close to 300,000 acres, an area bigger than the city of Los Angeles, with containment sitting under 40%. What makes this fire especially alarming is that several separate fires burning nearby recently merged into one another, folding into a single larger complex under one incident command. When fires merge like that, containment percentages can drop overnight, even when crews haven't lost ground, simply because the newly combined perimeter is so much larger than what had previously been mapped. Close to 1,400 personnel are assigned to this complex right now. The scale of the operation has forced the closure of the John Day Fossil Beds National Monument, along with public land on both sides of the John Day River. Moving across Oregon, the bench fire on the Warm Springs Reservation has burned over 45,000 acres and remains in the single digits for containment, one of the highest priority incidents in the entire Northwest right now. The Ahwahnee Fire in Deschutes and Jefferson counties has burned close to 30,000 acres right along the northern edge of Sisters, Oregon, with containment still only in the low double digits. Roads remain hazardous, and power outages are still affecting surrounding communities. Also burning in eastern Oregon is the Big Grass Fire out in remote high desert rangeland near Jordan Valley. Nearly 300,000 acres of its own, larger even than Rowena Creek, but sitting at just 5% containment. It's a stark example of how few personnel are left to assign once a fire is burning mostly through open rangeland with few structures at risk. And the Shingle Fire in Wheeler County has jumped county lines and burned past 64,000 acres, prompting a Level 2 evacuation notice for the town of Dayville. Zoom out to the statewide picture, and more than 6,000 people across Oregon are currently under Level 3 Go Now evacuation orders. Oregon's governor has activated the state's Emergency Conflagration Act, a legal tool reserved only for the most extreme fire emergencies the state has ever declared. State officials have been blunt. The landscape is so dry right now that a single stray ember from a vehicle, a piece of equipment, or a lightning strike miles away could spark the next major wildfire, capable of growing just as fast as the ones already burning. Now across into Washington state, back to where we started. The Kaiser Canyon Fire, one of the most heartbreaking stories of this entire fire season. It ignited from a lightning strike in mid-July on the Colville Reservation, just 1 mile south of Nispelem in Okanogan County. It has now burned well past 120,000 acres, with containment still critically low, sitting somewhere in the mid-teens. At least 20 structures have been confirmed destroyed, hundreds more remain under threat, and roughly 1,000 people have been displaced from their homes across the reservation. At one point earlier this month, the fire was burning within just 2 miles of town, close enough that residents could watch the smoke column rise directly over the ridgeline above their homes. This fire has burned through land the Colville tribes consider sacred. Thousands of acres of culturally significant territory that cannot be replaced, tied to generations of tribal history. And that cemetery we opened with, tied to Chief Joseph's final resting place, was directly threatened by the flames and narrowly escaped. FEMA authorized fire management assistance funding for this incident just 1 day after it ignited, a sign of how quickly it overwhelmed local capacity. Multiple state highways and county roads remain closed, including sections of State Route 155. So what actually sparked this entire outbreak? One dangerous weather pattern: dry lightning. A dry thunderstorm produces lightning and thunder, but the rain evaporates before it ever reaches the ground, meaning thousands of lightning strikes can hit bone-dry vegetation with zero moisture to help suppress the ignitions. It's one of the most dangerous fire weather setups in the western U.S. because it delivers the one ingredient wildfires need most: an ignition source, without any of the moisture that would normally slow a fire's early growth. A wave of dry thunderstorms in mid-July sent thousands of lightning strikes across the Cascade Range and further east, sparking dozens of separate fires almost simultaneously. Satellite imagery from that period showed smoke plumes stretching across hundreds of square miles in a single frame. Researchers studying the broader pattern note that the severe western snow drought that set the stage for all of this was made significantly more likely by long-term shifts in regional climate patterns. A historically warm winter, record low mountain snowpack, severe drought, then dry lightning, then extreme heat, then strong winds, each factor compounding the one before it. Moving south into the Great Basin, Nevada currently has 4 large fires burning, all showing active and aggressive behavior. The chimney fire near Midas has burned around 21,000 acres and reached close to half. Containment. The New Pass fire northwest of Austin has burned nearly 18,000 acres at 0% containment. The Quail Springs fire west of Alamo has burned around 13,000 acres, also at 0%. Together, these 4 fires cover more than 55,000 acres, 2 of them still completely uncontained. Nevada officials have taken the unusual step of issuing a season-long air quality advisory. Not for a week, not for a month, but for the rest of the entire fire season. In Colorado, the Aspen Acres fire in Custer and Huerfano counties has become one of the most destructive wildfires in the state's recorded history, ranking among the top 10 largest fires Colorado has ever seen. It started in late June, driven by severe drought and wind gusts that reportedly reached close to 100 km/h on its very first day, and has since burned past 100,000 acres. More than 800 structures, several hundred homes across the towns of Beulah and Rye, have been damaged or destroyed. At its peak, thousands of homes were under mandatory evacuation, displacing well over 10,000 people. The good news? After a month of intense effort, containment has climbed to roughly 2/3, with National Guard soldiers helping staff checkpoints so deputies could patrol evacuated neighborhoods more closely. A recovery assistance center has opened in Pueblo. Real progress, but the job is far from finished. Also in Colorado, the Gold Mountain fire north of Ouray has burned close to 40,000 acres and stands at roughly 60% containment, actively burning for over a month now. A firefighting helicopter pilot was tragically killed while working this fire earlier in the season, a loss worth pausing on. Because the people on these fire lines are doing one of the most dangerous jobs in the country, often in remote mountainous terrain that makes both firefighting and search and rescue especially difficult. California, by comparison, currently has 5 large fires burning, covering close to 90,000 acres altogether, considerably calmer than the picture further north and east. The largest has already reached near full containment, and a smaller fire in the Sierra foothills is nearing full containment as crews mop up remaining hotspots. Still, officials warn that above normal temperatures, low humidity, and weakening monsoon moisture are keeping fire danger elevated across California and the broader Southwest, meaning that calm could shift in a single afternoon. Now here's the part that matters, even if you don't live anywhere near these fires. The smoke has become a national problem, not just a Western one. Smoke from Oregon and Washington is riding the jet stream eastward, across the northern plains, through the Great Lakes, into the mid-Atlantic, and with forecasters warning the plume could reach as far south as Florida in the coming days. If you're in the southeast, and you've noticed unusually hazy skies lately, this is why, even without a single fire burning anywhere near you, closer to the source, it's far worse. Boise, Idaho has been stuck in the very unhealthy air quality category for multiple consecutive days. Oregon's Environmental Quality Department has issued open-ended air quality advisories covering 13 counties. Health. Officials recommend staying indoors, keeping windows closed, running air conditioning on recirculate, and wearing a properly rated N95 or KN95 mask if you have to go outside. Here's why that actually matters medically. Wildfire smoke contains PM2.5. Fine particulate matter, smaller than the width of a human hair, small enough to lodge deep in your lungs and even enter your bloodstream. Short-term exposure causes coughing, burning eyes, a scratchy throat, shortness of breath. For people with asthma, heart disease, or existing lung conditions, it can become genuinely life-threatening. Extreme heat compounds the problem since high temperatures accelerate the chemical reactions that produce ground-level ozone, especially over major western metro areas where vehicle emissions add another layer into the mix. When elevated ozone combines with fine particulate matter from smoke, the combined health risk is considerably worse than either factor alone. That's exactly the combination much of the West is dealing with right now, heading into the first days of August. Looking ahead, conditions remain concerning for new fire starts across the Great Basin and northern Rockies. Isolated dry thunderstorms are expected over southern Idaho with scattered storms, some wet, some dry, forecast across Utah, Wyoming, and Montana. Any dry cells among those storms could drop lightning onto vegetation that's already primed to ignite, the same basic pattern that triggered this entire outbreak back in mid-July. In the Pacific Northwest itself, no thunderstorms are in the immediate forecast, but afternoon humidity is expected to run in the 10 to 20% range, well below the 30% threshold that fire weather forecasters flag as a serious concern. Triple-digit heat is expected across the southern plains, and temperatures across California, the Great Basin, and the Southwest will run 5 to 15 degrees above normal. Even Hawaii isn't exempt. A tropical storm passing north of the islands is bringing increased winds. A reminder that fire danger from strong, dry winds isn't confined to the mainland this time of year. The extended outlook offers little relief. Fire officials are forecasting above normal fire potential through the rest of the summer across the Northwest, central Idaho, western Wyoming, northern Nevada, northern Utah, and northeastern California. The monsoon pattern that typically brings the Southwest. Some late summer moisture relief has been weakening, removing one of the few natural tools that can slow fire growth better than any amount of additional ground crews. So here's the bottom line heading into the week ahead. The western United States remains in an extraordinary fire emergency, and there's no significant shift in the weather pattern on the horizon that would bring meaningful relief. If you live in a fire-prone area anywhere across Oregon, Washington, Nevada, California, Idaho, Montana, or Colorado, now is the time to have an emergency bag ready, know your evacuation zone level, and stay closely tied to local alerts. This is a fast-moving, constantly evolving situation. Fire perimeters shift daily, evacuation orders change by the hour in some areas, and new fires remain a real possibility with every afternoon thunderstorm cycle across the West. It's worth stepping back, too, and putting this season in historical context, because reaching the highest national preparedness level this early in the summer, rather than the traditional peak of late August or September, has only happened a handful of times in the past decade and a half. That timing matters enormously, because it means firefighting agencies are committing the bulk of their national resources now, while several of the historically worst weeks of fire season still lie ahead. Every additional week this outbreak continues before conditions ease is another week where any newly ignited fire has to compete for an already stretched pool of crews, aircraft, and equipment. That's exactly the dynamic behind fires, like Big Grass in Oregon, burning at just 5% containment despite covering an enormous amount of ground. Behind every one of these numbers are real firefighters on the line, real families who've already evacuated, real communities holding their breath right now across the American West. On the Colville Reservation, that grief goes beyond structures and acreage. It's sacred land and cultural sites that took generations to become what they were, gone in weeks. Small towns like Fossil, Dayville, Beulah, and Rye are watching their local economies, schools, and support networks strained by extended evacuations and smoke exposure that shows no signs of lifting soon. And the firefighters themselves, 26,000 of them nationwide, plus international reinforcements from Australia and New Zealand, are working extended, exhausting rotations under some of the most demanding conditions this profession sees, with real risk attached to every single shift, as this season's line of duty loss in Colorado tragically underscored. Whatever happens over the coming weeks, this remains a story about real people navigating a genuinely severe, still unfolding emergency, not a distant statistic on a federal situation report. That cemetery outside Nespelem is still standing. Not every place near it was as lucky.